So Hare Krishna, welcome, a warm welcome to all the devotees, and especially to Nitai Pada Kamala Prabhu. Wonderful to have you all on this call today, and really looking forward to hearing from a devotee who spent such substantial time with Guru Maharaj and who served him in such a wonderful way. I think every one of us are really so grateful to him, and are so much looking forward to hearing about his experiences and his realizations. Yeah, Nitai Pada Kamala Prabhu is really a wonderful Vaishnava, and I know that I've gained very much from being in his association. Um, and yeah, thank you for making the time to do this, Prabhu. I think you're in Vienna at the moment. Is that right?
Yes, that is right. I'm here in Vienna.
Yeah, so wonderful to have you here, Prabhu. Actually, I got a bit of a gripe because you did a wonderful interview yesterday, and kind of stole all the questions, all the good questions away. And I hope all of the devotees caught that interview. It's published on Facebook. It's on the, is it right? The TEDx page.
Yes.
We've shared it in the disciple group as well. But such wonderful interview, I feel a little bit intimidated, but I think you carried it. So I'm going to rely on you to carry this one as well.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, thank you so much. And yeah, I like I said, I want to encourage the devotees to watch that interview. So many wonderful memories and pastimes and realizations you shared. So I want to try to mix it up a bit and ask you some different questions. And then also open it up to the devotees to ask questions that they may have for you. So Surabhi Kunj, one of the co-hosts here, will help pose the questions and so on. And devotees, you can already start posting your questions in the chat, and we'll try to sort the questions kind of by theme, and then try to summarize it for Nitai Prabhu so that he can address as many questions as possible. So hopefully that approach works for everyone. Yeah, so maybe just to start off, Prabhu, maybe you can just briefly describe how it is that you came to serve Maharaj, Guru Maharaj, and yeah, then we take it from there.
Yes. So first time I met Maharaj in 2011 when I was only 10 years old. Of course, I was just a small boy then, so didn't get any chance to speak with him. And actually recently, just before he passed away, I showed him one of the pictures from that Holy Name Festival where he's leading this amazing kirtan, and we're all dancing and chanting in that kirtan. And he looked at that photo and said, "I didn't realize you were so young when we first met." And then Maharaj really liked coming to Slovenia, to Ljubljana temple, especially for the Janmashtami festival. He basically made Slovenia his destination for Janmashtami. And he came there practically every year since 2012. The only few exceptions were the year that he got cancer. But then in 2016, he already returned to his old ways. And during those festivals, he came to some Holy Name festivals as well. I always tried to play mridanga for him because I was kind of the best mridanga player in Slovenia. But usually for these festivals, some other mridanga players would come also. And I would play along, sort of to learn myself some new tricks and some new beats, and try to play for the best, for the best kirtaniyas. So in that way, I played mridanga all the time, and I tried to keep up with Maharaj, but that is a very difficult task for any mridanga player. What to speak of a young teenager as I was back then. Didn't have the strength yet, didn't have the stamina. So Maharaj used to do this gesture, and he would call it whipping the horse. So he would whip or beat the horse. He would say, I used to beat him. I used to whip him, try to get him to play along, you know. Always had to reel me back in onto the speed of his kirtan. So yes, that was basically every year occurrence. I was very lucky that Ananta Gauranga from America, from Alachua, he used to travel with Harinam Ruchi, and he would always come. They would always come for Janmashtami festival or Holy Name festival. So he would be the main mridanga player, and he was kind of my role model, you know, like a good-looking brahmachari, young brahmachari, black with his cool-looking lip. You know, if you know one of his brothers, they all have the lip, and Maharaj also really he said, once we were discussing the differences because he has a twin brother, Kishore Gopal. So, and then at one point they were both in white. And then Maharaj said, now I'm not going to be able to differentiate between you two. And then we were discussing a few differences between them. And I said, well, Kishore Gopal, he has an even bigger lip than Ananta Gauranga. And then Maharaj said, what are you talking about, this lip? I like the lip. So anyway, I thought Ananta Gauranga was very cool. So I tried to, you know, copy his style, you know, and I saw that Maharaj really also liked his style. But at that time, also, I didn't really think about Maharaj in any special way. I didn't think of him as my guru or anything. So I just played mridanga, you know. I liked his style of kirtan, that's for sure. But so I just played mridanga just for fun for him. And but in 2019, I really went all out, and also at that time Ananta Gauranga didn't come, so I really felt like, okay, now this is the time when I should go all out for Maharaj and try to play mridanga as hard as I can. So for that Janmashtami in 2019 in particular, I almost broke my hand because I played mridanga for first, it was an hour and a half in Harinam, and then just a few hours later, I did 2.5 more hours in Abhishek Kirtan that Maharaj led, and it was really intense. You can look it up on the YouTube. It was a great kirtan. Maharaj went full speed, no brakes, like he said. The brakes are off, and I almost broke my hand. My hand was really swollen afterwards. And that Janmashtami festival in particular was a 3-day festival because it started on Friday. Janmashtami was on Friday, and then Saturday was Prabhupada's Vyasa Puja, and then on Sunday was Sunday Feast Festival. And on that Sunday Feast lecture, Maharaj started to tease me during the lecture. It was very interesting. I was thinking, what is going on? You know, why is he so, you know, always teasing me in front of everybody else? You know, we don't have a relationship. We never talked. So what is going on? And for example, he said, he was speaking about his experience in his youth, and he was saying how, you know, he did a lot of crazy things. And then he turns to me and he says, if you want to do something crazy, come see me after the lecture in my room. And then, you know, they say I smile very widely and all my teeth are showing. So it was also very interesting because in that particular summer, we did a few Harinams in Slovenia. And every time we met some older lady or something, they would always say, "Oh, you have such beautiful teeth." And then Maharaj on his lecture, he goes, "You have such beautiful teeth." But then he says, "But in your old age, it's all gonna fall out." And he says, you know, that his famous saying, "It all comes out in the wash." And that was the second thing that he teased me about during that lecture. And then the last thing that he did on that lecture, he was just finishing up the lecture, and he said, "I don't know what all of you were in your previous life." And then he points at me and he says, "But I know what you were." And then he became grave and he said, "But don't become like that again." And then he finishes his lecture. And then, you know, all the devotees were saying, you know, Maharaj has a target on you, you know, in prasadam time, they were saying this things. And then Jagannath Sutta said, you know, look, you have an invitation, you know, public invitation in front of everybody in that Sunday feast class to come see Maharaj in his room after the class, you know, so you should go, you know. And Jagannath Sutta, he's the first disciple of Maharaj in Slovenia. And he was also at that time, just for the period that Maharaj was in Slovenia, he was arranging things and he was kind of like his servant there. So he pulls me into the room and there is a group of Bulgarian devotees there as well. And then they were sitting in a half circle, and he was asking everybody what they are doing, what is their plan in life, and he went from his right side towards the left side, and I was sitting all the way on his left side so I was at the end of that half circle. And at the end he comes to me and he asks me, so what are you doing? Who are you? And what are your plans in life? What are you doing in life? What is your occupation now? And so on. And I said, I just finished high school and I'm taking a year off from school. I'm not going straight to university. And I don't really know what I'm gonna do in this year. So Maharaj says, why don't you come with me to New York? I said, okay, you know, that's New York, okay, America, okay, that's interesting. But what will I do in New York? I don't want to go to New York and just hang out there, you know, that doesn't appeal to me. And he says, you're gonna be my personal servant. I said, wow, okay, that is something, you know, that is something special. I can't pass up on this kind of opportunity, but I will have to ask my father first for permission. And I called my father, and then I said to him, you know, look, Maharaj is inviting me to come with him to New York as a personal servant. And my father says, okay, when would that be, you know? And I said, it's going to be in October. And he says, okay, but you have to be back for the marathon race that we have on the 25th of October or something. It was there. I said, you know, look, it doesn't really matter, you know, if I go to Swami. The marathon race is not so important. So he said, okay, you can go, no problem. And then Maharaj also wanted to speak to my parents at that time. So somehow or other, he was supposed to fly out on that day already to Germany, but somehow or other he missed his flight. He said that was the only time actually he missed his flight, and it was not on purpose. He just mixed up the dates. He thought he's flying the next day, but he was actually flying that day. So anyway, my parents come and they sit in the room and they are talking, and Maharaj is very nice to them. He sits them on the sofa next to him. And then he talks to my mother, and my mother said, yes, you know, but one thing you will have to be very careful about, you don't know how much he eats. Because Maharaj said, don't worry, I will feed him. And she said, but you don't know how much he eats. And just a few weeks before he left his body, actually, he said, I did quite a good job in feeding you. You have to give me that. You were never hungry. I made sure I fed you nicely. In that way, Maharaj was. That's how our story began. He said that October month will be a test month, and then we can see how it all develops.
I remember him saying one day, yeah, this little kid, I had to tolerate this little kid banging on the drum, all offbeat and, maybe not exactly in time, because I guess, you're still learning.
Yeah.
And then so expert, and then so expert. I also remember when you were traveling with him in the caravan or on the van, and he was saying on one Zoom meeting, yeah, these boys are eating me out of pocket, so it was really wonderful to see the exchanges between all of you. Maybe you can share with us, as some disciples looking from the outside. You were saying yesterday how Janani Prabhu had advised you to just be natural and be yourself and be relaxed and focus in this way on serving Guru Maharaj. But for someone who's looking from the outside, it may be a bit bewildering, to see a disciple interacting with a spiritual master in this way. But this is something that Guru Maharaj really appreciated. So maybe you can share some thoughts about that with us.
Yes. So we all know that Maharaj, many times he emphasized this point that he wanted to be very open to everybody, and that he used to look at the 11, because he came at that time to ISKCON. He joined ISKCON in 1978, and he looked at the 11 gurus and he saw how they were very, very pompous, and they accepted a lot of worship, and they were not really available for everybody to speak to, and all the gurus that followed also followed in that kind of a mood. So he decided he's gonna be different, and he's gonna be more accessible to everybody and anybody that approaches him. So his thing was that he didn't want to become a deity for everybody to worship. That's maybe also his nature as a Dutchman. He doesn't like this kind of authority figures. So he always wanted people to be natural and to act in relationship with him as a human being. He wanted to be seen as a human being, or acted in such a way. He wanted to establish such a natural relationship as between two humans, not that somebody, you come there with your folded hands, your head down, and not being able to speak because you're so nervous in the presence of such a deity. He wanted you to come in, and be able to talk to him, able to have a nice conversation. And many times he got annoyed with people that came in such a mood. He said, so much of this Dasyaras or Shantaras, actually, he said, so much of this Shantaras I don't like this, be more relaxed, be more natural, open up, be more like, it's okay, we are all human here. You don't need to be so scared. In that way, he was many times encouraging his disciples to be more open to him and not so in fear, approaching him with fear, and very humble and not, because then he felt like they were very closed off. He couldn't reach them really. Because he tried to connect with them on a how to say, on a personal level, very personal level. But if they were treating him as a deity, he couldn't do that. He couldn't reach them on a personal level.
I guess the other side of that, and one of the devotees is asking about this as well, is how to react then when, sometimes there'd be some chastisement, or, Guru Maharaj would shout, or, speak in a loud voice to correct the devotees. So on the one hand, it's looking, pretty relaxed, but on the other hand, sometimes, you get the source.
Yes, that is always there. They say that that nobody should find faults with anybody. The only person that can find faults with anybody is a guru in his disciple. But with Maharaj, when he would get angry, he would be angry just for a few moments, and then he would be again very, very calm and very nice to everybody. It was never that he would drag on his anger for a long time, and if he gave you the sauce, that didn't mean he threw you out of his personal association. There is one story with him and Bhaktavatsala. Bhaktavatsala had a few arguments with Gopali's certain management thing, and then Maharaj said, you two are way too much. Bhaktavatsala, I'm not gonna stay at your house ever again. And then Maharaj is coming to India. He lands in Delhi, and Bhaktavatsala knows this, but he's doing his other stuff because Maharaj told him he's not gonna come and live in his house anymore. So he's off duty now, and then Maharaj calls him, and he says, "So, is the apartment ready?" And Bhaktavatsala said, "What do you mean? You said you're not gonna stay here." He said, "Bhaktavatsala," like he used to say, you have 1 hour to get the apartment ready, and you have to make sure that your sister cooks because I'm hungry. So in that way, he never held grudges. It was just to correct his disciple in a certain at a certain times in a certain place, but this was all in a good spirit. He never held a grudge against anybody.
Did you ever cook for him? And one devotee is asking if you ever cooked, and do you have any experiences with him in that regard?
Well, once I did cook. We were in Leipzig, and there was nobody there. Leipzig is kind of just a center, and the devotees usually come just for programs. So at that time, I said, okay, I can make a khichdi. And there was just a few pots and just a electric stove. It's just one electric plate, and it was a big trip to get that khichdi done, but somehow or other I got it done, and it was edible. It was not really how to say tasty or anything, but it was somehow or other it was edible. And then other times when we didn't have a cook, then he would just tell me, just boil some potatoes and then I'll eat them with butter. And that's the trick. Actually, I used it today. It still works. And one time we were in Eisfeld, that is somewhere in I think it's already in Bayern or is still in East Germany. So we were in this Eisfeld visiting one of his disciples. His name is Chaitanya Das, I think now. Before he was known as Stuki. And we were in his place, and then Maharaj decided that he's gonna cook. So he also cooked once. He cooked, I think he cooked some rice and sabji and a few other things. I forgot. I think asparagus also he fried on a pan. And he said, I have more experience than you. I've lived I managed a restaurant, so sometimes I need to cook something also. And I lived in a Hare Krishna temple. They taught me how to cook. So he did everything very like his usual self, everything very spontaneously. He never measured anything. He did it the Indian way.
Yeah, that's really wonderful. Did you get to try some of it?
Yes, we ate. That was basically he cooked lunch for us. That was in March 21, the beginning of the third time that I started traveling with him, and the beginning of the 2 years, the complete 2 years, the last 2 years that I was with him.
So how was it?
It was good. It was good. At that time, he didn't take so much salt because he had his blood pressure problems, so it was not so salty. But yeah, it was good.
Yeah, I think many of us recall the past time he related about how he cooked for many guests, and making the dough and then separating the dough in half for puris and half for samosas.
Yes.
And yeah, it's Gurudev was certainly an expert cook. One of the devotees is asking, could you share your initiation? Yeah, how did your initiation take place?
Yes, so I got initiated on April 10th of 2021. And a week before, Maharaj was saying, okay, so when are you getting initiated? Because he was making a list for initiations for his Vyasa Puja that he celebrated in Simhachalam. So he said, so when are you getting initiated? I said, I don't know, you tell me when you want to do it, you tell me. He said, yeah, I will do it now, but you don't have a disciple course. And I said, okay, no problem. I can do that in 2 days. He said, not possible. Not possible. People are dealing with this disciple course for months. This is, I don't believe it. I said, yeah. Jagannath Sutta told me, 2 days max. Many people that he got through this online course did it in 2 days. And Maharaj still didn't believe it. So I said, okay, fine. I think I just have to show him for him to believe it. So I did it in about a day and a half. I did like 6 hours a day. I was just watching the videos and did the multiple choice exams online. And I got the certificate in 2 days. And Maharaj was very impressed. This is I've never seen anybody make it so quick. So he said, okay, you'll be also initiated. You are also on the list. So on the initiation day, I think we went on a walk before. It was a afternoon initiation. So then I take a shower and I come. And actually, I forgot to put my tilak on for the initiation, which was very, very bad. And then after the initiation, Maharaj said, you bum, I should have told you during the initiation to go put on tilak, but I said, okay, I'm not gonna make a big scene about it. Anyway, so first in that initiation was initiated Hariveno. Actually, we were initiated together, and then it was my turn, and I came to receive my beads and my name. And then Maharaj asked me about the four aggregative principles, and I tell the four aggregative principles. And then somehow or other Maharaj already tried to proceed with the whole thing. He already tried to give me the name. And then Tatvavati Mataji, she says from the background, "What about the rounds?" And Maharaj goes, yeah, the rounds. You didn't promise the rounds." and then he goes, very good. I should have you at every initiation that I do, if I forget. So because she said, then she was shrugging her shoulders, like, what to do. I had to say it. He went like, very good. Don't be embarrassed. And then he said, okay, yes, so promise the rounds, and I promised rounds, and he said, anyway, I have to be sure that they promise everything, otherwise they have the maneuverability to say, oh, I didn't promise the rounds. But then he said, but anyway, he's doing it, so I'm not worried about that, because we were traveling and he saw that I was chanting my rounds. And then he said, okay, so there were two options. I could give you a very complicated name, or I can give you a simple name. And he said, because traveling with me, I will make it easy on my. And he said, from this day on, you will be known as Nitai Pada Kamala Das. And then he said, sometimes I'm gonna call you Nitai, sometimes I'm gonna call you Pada or Kamala. He said, we will work something out. But he never called me by any other name except Nitai. Those who know our interactions, he would usually call out my name in a voice resembling a siren. It would sound like this, Nitai. And then I would answer, yes. And but then whenever he would introduce me to somebody, he would always go, and this is Nitai Pada Kamalada. As if he has to revise for himself. But then I asked him one time, and he said, this is your full name. When I introduce you, I have to introduce you by your full name. Yes. So like that. That was my first initiation. And then interesting was, this was not in the question, but interesting was also the second initiation, because there was this point that I don't have my Bhakti Shastri yet. So he was always like, okay, should I give it to you? Should I not give it to you? I was worshipping Giriraj. So, he thought he thought I was ready for the second initiation, but the point of Bhakti Shastri was the only point that he didn't like, that I didn't have. And then this was time of New York Rath Yatra. Then he decided, okay, I'll give you the initiation. But at the time, he didn't really tell me, you're getting initiated tomorrow. So I was in that morning, I was like, okay, am I getting initiated or not? So we go downstairs to the temple room, and the initiation is already starting. And I set up the beads next to Maharaj. I sit next to Maharaj, thinking, okay, Maharaj just decided he's not going to initiate me this time as well. And then in the middle, they already start with the purificatory process. And then Maharaj says, oh, I forgot, you're getting initiated also. And then he made me promise in front of Radha Govinda that I have to do my Bhakti Shastri. So I promised. And so I have to do my Bhakti Shastri still. Anyway, so he, in that way, he gave me my second initiation.
That's really wonderful. Um, maybe, yeah, shifting topics now closer to the time of his departure. Um, he was certainly, I mean, from the time he arrived in Vrindavan, certainly spending a lot of time with senior devotees, and especially with His Holiness Jayaveda Swami Maharaj. And it seems, at least to myself, that over time their relationship evolved into, you know, yeah, I'm not sure exactly how to describe it, but definitely into something more intimate. And what was your experience of that?
I've seen them interact before, even in New York and so on. And I was always very fascinated that Jayadvaita Swami was not at all that scary as people make him out to be. You know, he's viewed as this very heavy, sharp type of a person that he cuts you down immediately if you just breathe the wrong way. but as I saw them interact, and as he was towards me also, I saw that Jayadvaita Swami is actually a very kind and a very generous person also himself. And I saw the immense respect that Maharaj had for Jayadvaita Swami. He would allow his disciples to be casual with him, but he would never allow himself to be casual with his spiritual master. We came to New York, and as soon as he saw Jayadvaita Swami, we just traveled from Washington to New York, and he immediately took off his shoes and fell flat, offering his Dandavata obeisances to Jayadvaita Swami. And in Vrindavan, he always, as long as he had any strength, he was always very careful to follow etiquette of Jayadvaita Swami being much senior to him in terms of him being his guru. So he would always try to make everything very convenient for Jayadvaita Swami. And then at the end, I think Jayadvaita Swami also insisted that or sometimes he would just show up, you know, he would not schedule, so that he could just show up at our apartment also. So at the end, they started reading the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. They started having this about an hour and a half long discussions, basically every day on the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. And through that, yes, they became very very close. And then when Maharaj got really sick, Jayadvaita Swami even moved to our apartment and basically watched over Maharaj and be there for him in his most difficult moments. And Jayadvaita Swami, he was very confident that Maharaj was firmly fixed in his Krishna consciousness, and that his mind is fixed on Krishna. The last day when I woke up the whole apartment, saying, okay, I think it's starting, his departure is starting. It was just me and Jayadvaita Swami in the room, and I said, he looks bad, doesn't he? Meaning Maharaj doesn't look good in terms of physical condition. And then Jayadvaita Swami, with a smile on his face, he says, he looks good to me. And I said, yes, Maharaj, I don't have that kind of spiritual vision. So in a sense of, please enlighten me, how does he look good to you? And he says, Yam yam vapi swaram bhavam tejatyante kalevaram tam tam evaiti sadata bhava bhavita. That whatever state of mind you have at the time of death, that state you will definitely attain in your next life. So he was very much confident that Maharaj had only Krishna on his mind. And when Maharaj was leaving his body, just at that moment, At those moments, Jayadvaita Swami was standing there with a huge smile on his face, basically indicating my disciple has succeeded in his life. So that was, I thought, very sweet.
Yeah, and it seems like Jayadvaita Maharaj was actually serving Guru Maharaj in many ways during those last days. Could you say something about that?
Yeah, we were all trying to help him. It was very difficult to watch Maharaj be so weak and actually helpless. He couldn't do anything by himself, you know. Just a month before, he was still the powerful Kadambakanda Swami. Even though he was very sick, he could still mask it for everybody else, you know. He could still make it seem like everything was fine. But at those last days, he was very weak and he couldn't do anything. And many times his even mucus would get stuck in his throat. So we would had one time we had to get it out by our hands. So, you know, we all tried to help Maharaj in any way we could. And Jayadvaita Swami also did many of such things. He also tried to make it easier for Maharaj, make it easier on his physical condition.
And you were describing that, closer towards Guru Maharaj's departure, Jayadvaita Maharaj had moved in as well.
Yes.
So, and then Keshav Maharaj was also spending most of the day there. So what was it like being in that, I guess, surcharged environment with, not counting your good self, 3 powerhouses, in the room?
Yeah, it was definitely something. It was the house was getting quite cramped up, I would say. 3 sannyasis living in the same house, plus 2 servants, plus Bhaktavatsala. And then during the day, and there would be also the servant of Jayadvaita Swami would be there, Praveen. And it was just, the presence of all of them was very special. I tried to serve Keshav Swami also in any way I could. So I moved out of our room. I slept actually in the living room. So every night I would take my bed and sleep in the living room. Until Maharaj got so sick that I had to move into his room. So in that way, I tried to make everything as comfortable as possible for the other 2 Swamis as well. And I thought, me being a brahmachari, that was kind of my duty. And I was happy to do that. And it was actually very blissful. And we had very nice exchanges. Keshav Swami, he is also very relaxed. He was very personal with us and also, relieved us of a lot of stress in terms of just being natural with us and joking sometimes or discussing some points. That was very nice, I thought. And Jayadvaita Swami, he was there as a big support. He was there to make us all more peaceful in terms of, okay, if anything goes wrong, he's there with his spiritual power. If Maharaj starts leaving his body, it's all good because Jayadvaita Swami is there. So we were all more peaceful in that sense.
I guess in that way, it was also always a very sheltered environment for the devotees who were serving Guru Maharaj. That, an immensely difficult situation. I mean, I can't even comprehend. But because of the presence of these devotees, also a very sheltered situation.
Yeah, you were there a lot of the times. So you got some glimpses of how it all went.
Yeah, I was very fortunate to have some glimpses as well.
The
Yeah,
big
very
thing,
grateful for that.
the big thing that Jayadvaita Swami really did was he brought his authority, and if anybody wanted to get in, that was not really allowed, or was much senior to us, that we couldn't really send them away without them being offended. We would always have a contingency plan. Call Jayadvaita Swami. There's a senior devotee on the door. Quick, call Jayadvaita Maharaj. It was very interesting. And Jayadvaita Swami, he would always immediately jump up and he would go and deal with those senior devotees in a very nice way, but very authoritatively. He would stand his ground.
Yeah, I guess for some devotees, maybe it's a little difficult to understand. Yeah, I mean, obviously there were many senior devotees wanting to see Gurudev, wanting to offer their respects to him and their appreciation and so on. But he just didn't seem to be in a position to receive them.
No, he stopped also receiving all the messages. He didn't want it to be read. Whatever it was too difficult for him to deal with anything. He just wanted peace and just focus on Krishna, just focus on hearing and chanting, and of course his deal with his bodily needs. But the main focus was get his mind absorbed on Krishna. That was his main objective.
Yeah, I guess in one sense, I don't know, maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong, but it seemed like, he was giving himself more than at least anyone I've ever seen. He lived a life in such a way. He was even sharing, that his grandmother had inspired him in that way, that she was really such a selfless person, always giving of herself. And he lived his life in this way. And it came to a time where he seemed to need to be more internal and more focused on his direct relationship with Krishna than just giving himself as he had done for practically his whole life.
Yes, exactly right. He said, the devotees don't know it, but the door will be shut. He said it. We will lock the door at one point. And he did that, and he stood by his word. And yes, his main thing was hearing and chanting and get absorbed as much as he could before the time would come to leave his body.
Yeah. So I just want to remind the devotees again that you did such a wonderful interview yesterday, where you spoke a lot about Guru Maharaj's actual departure. So I've intentionally not asked many questions about that. Tried to go into different areas so different devotees could hear some different pastimes. So I just want to remind devotees, please catch that. We'll post the link once more on the group. It's on Facebook, I think, called the TEDx Facebook page. We'll share that so devotees can share in the pastimes that you're relating.
Yes.
I see the questions are coming in fast and furious now. That's always the case, right? When we're coming close to the end, we get a lot of questions. So let's see how many we can take. Krupa is asking, what was it like to see Maharaj so dedicated to chanting his rounds, even when it was so difficult and Jayadvaita Maharaj had given him permission not to?
Yeah, he said, I've asked my disciples to chant their 16 rounds every single day, so I have to do it. It is not a choice. It's actually, he wanted to do it, but it was also he thought it was his duty as well to do it every single day. And he would, every single day, especially when he was more weak, he would wake up at midnight and he would start chanting. And then he got to a point where he couldn't stand up by himself anymore. He would get on his chair in the room and he would start chanting. And usually he would get up by himself, but one night he couldn't anymore. So he asked me to get him up. And I got him up to sit on the bed. And then I tried to get him on the chair, but somehow or other, he got stuck in a weird position, not on the chair and not on the bed anymore. And it was like very dangerous, actually. I thought he might fall on the ground. So then I had to lift him up, there are the pictures of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu lifting up Haridas Thakur. So I lifted him up in that way, or lift him up like a baby in a cradle. So, but he was very light at that time already. So I somehow or other, I got him on that chair, and that he was really exhausted, but still he wanted the beads, give me the beads. And he started chanting, and he would chant about like an hour or hour and a half from midnight to 1:30, and then he would go back on his bed and he would sleep some more, and then he would get up at 3:30 in the morning and he would go outside into the living room and he would chant for about 2 hours more on the chair, on the armchair that he had in the living room. And it was more or less inaudible, but you could see that he's chanting, right? You saw it many times as you came to do puja as well. And so he was chanting his rounds, and it would take a long time, and it would take the whole day practically, and he would be still like on round number 13 in the evening, and he would still do 3 rounds. He made sure he did all the rounds every day. It was incredible.
Yeah, it's certainly, quite inconceivable how he seemed to transcend his physical situation.
He had a very strong mind, very strong mind. Sometimes I thought his body is not being able to do what he's doing, especially in the last days, that his body actually is not able to stand up, but with his mind, he's just so powerful that somehow or other he pulls his body up, and gets up and does a few steps and then grabs something. Or when he had his big crisis in the beginning of February, he would get up to go to the bathroom and he was so, he would be so sick. He would, like be wobbly on his legs, but somehow or other it was looking like he was already falling on his back, but then he would pull himself up, And then actually Jagannath Sutta cleaned his bathroom and it was very slippery. And Maharaj comes to the bathroom and he comes out and he goes like, what is this? It's so slippery in the bathroom. And then Jagannath Sutta goes to check and he almost falls like 3 times. And he was like, this is so inconceivable. How did Maharaj do it? He's so wobbly on his legs, but then he comes out of the bathroom like nothing happened. It's just a little bit slippery in the bathroom. And then I asked Maharaj, how did you do it? You were so wobbly and then slippery bathroom, you're weak. I would think you just fall and hurt yourself. Because I have sailor's legs. And I have very stable. I'm very stable on my feet. So he said, I have experience with this. Like that.
Yeah.
Very strong mind.
I guess what's on many devotees' mind is Given that you've had, such close association with Gurudev, served him, I think 3.5 years, you were saying. And I guess something that devotees are contemplating for themselves is, okay, what to do now that he isn't physically present. And I guess they're also asking the question of you, how is your life different that is not physically present anymore? And how are you coping with that?
Well, one big difference is that now I have to pay my tickets myself. No, I'm joking. But it is not so different actually, because he instructed me to still travel around the world. And the main difference is I cannot talk to him anymore. I cannot joke with him anymore. So he's not physically with me. But, traveling, because I did it with him, and with chanting because I chanted a lot of my rounds with him, and doing the spiritual things that we did together, I can always feel like he's just around the corner and I can speak to him again. So it's not so difficult actually for me. It's still, I'm still on the basically the same program that I was before. It's just the thing that I really feel like it's that maybe physically my big protector is gone, that he will not be able to physically protect, because he protected me many times from many unfavorable situations in terms of my service to him. Sometimes devotees would flip out, and then he would take the blame for me. For example, there is a story, we were going on a tour of Holland in the beginning of the summer in 2021, and before we were in Simhachalam in Radhadesh, it was only raining and snowing till the beginning of June, and then finally there was some sun, and we went to Holland, and we were doing a tour of Holland, and we were doing Harinams in different cities, just the two of us. And then the next day he decided, okay, we are going to Radhadesh. So I texted Gauravani that we are coming to Radhadesh and she should prepare everything. And then she flipped out, how can you, let me know 3 seconds before, this is not how it's supposed to be done, I have so many things I'm doing, you try doing what I'm doing, you'll never be able to do that. I said, I don't know, and then I don't know if she called Maharaj or Maharaj called her. And then he said, it is not Nitai's fault. It is the fault of Kadamba Kanana Swami. And then try to be angry with your guru. It's a bit tough, I was just talking to Gauravani a few days ago because we were together in Czech. She came for that memorial in Prague that the Czech devotees did for Maharaj. So she told me that story, and I said, "Oh yes, I do remember." But the thing is, none of us two knew what we were going to do, because he said we are following the sun, and the forecast became like that it's time to go back to Radhadesh. So we decided to go back to Radhadesh for a few days, and then we'll go out again. So nobody knows the schedule really, just Maharaj was very spontaneous at that time, especially. And then he just decided, okay, now we're going to Radhadesh. And maybe, some devotees had a little problem with that, but he always made sure to protect me and not, he tried to make me feel like, okay, you're gonna do anything for me and I'm gonna do anything for you.
I mean, that's really, really special. Thank you for sharing that. I guess the other side of it is that we got so used to seeing yourself and Jagannath Sutta Prabhu together, and now you're going to be traveling with Harinam Ruchi, like you were saying, and
Yeah.
Harinamananda Prabhu, and I think he's headed to the manor for some time.
Yes, yes. Well, with Jagannath Sutta, we've been good friends for quite some time now. Actually, I remember him coming for the first times to the temple. And actually, I was thinking to myself, is he gonna stick long enough for us to become friends? I remember thinking that. So we did become friends, and he's basically responsible for me starting to travel with Maharaj, because without him, I would never have gone into that room. So I was traveling with Maharaj for 1 year alone, and then the last year, then Maharaj announced his cancer diagnosis. Then Jagannath Sutta also joined us. Actually, he traveled with us a little bit before for 3 months in 2021 in the summer, and then now for the whole year, almost 1 whole year, during Maharaj's cancer period. And this is life. Sometimes we are together, sometimes we are apart, but we have phones, so we can call each other. It's not such a big deal.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think we'll start to. It's been an hour now, so we'll start to wrap up. I guess one thing I wanted to share with the devotees that I'm aware of is that you made a lot of personal sacrifice actually to do the service, and I know that you had also registered for some studies as well during the lockdown, and it was it wasn't clear what the world situation would be like. You were sharing that yesterday as well.
Yes.
It wasn't really clear what it would be like, so you registered for your studies, but then when Guru Maharaj needed you, then you dropped everything and went to serve him once again.
Well, I think I needed him more than he needed me, but yes, I was more like, okay, what do I want to do in life? And then I said, okay, let me call Kadamba Swami. And he said, okay, you can come in March because it might not work out with me and this servant. And he knew, we knew each other from before. I served him before, so he knew, with me, he will have somebody steady. Then he said, okay, we can come. And then when I got initiated, he said, okay, now I ask you to travel with me for a substantial amount of time. He said, this is the sacrifice I want you to make. So then I said, of course.
Yeah, I think, from my side, it's just really wonderful to see how you were prepared to put everything on the line, I mean, whatever commitments you had, or, you just put them aside for your service. And I just have so much appreciation for that. And it's really so wonderful. Thank you so much. I think all the devotees are feeling the same way. I mean, it's really incredible. I guess words fail us when we come to the point of appreciating how wonderful your service actually was, and how meaningful it was to many devotees. To know that Guru Maharaj had your care, it really reassured a lot of devotees. So I don't know if I'll be adequately able to express it, but thank you seems so feeble, but really from the bottom of our hearts, all the Vaishnavas assembled, thank you so much for your incredible service.
Thank you. It was my pleasure to do it.
I know that I know you haven't shared this with other devotees, but I know that you also made a substantial down payment for your studies, to register for your studies. You made a payment of €2,500 to register for your studies. And I mean, obviously you're a brahmachari, so that's in brahmachari dollars, or brahmachari euros, it's a lot more. if I can put it that way. So yeah, dear devotees, many of you have been asking, how can we reciprocate with Nitai Pada Kamala Prabhu? And so it occurred to a few of us that actually, given this sacrifice that Nitai Pada Kamala Prabhu made, that we could assist him with this this debt that has come up as a result of the service. So he unflinchingly, without any hesitation, agreed to serve Guru Maharaj, in this time, and so he had to forfeit the down payment that he made. So there's some debt that's resulted, from that. So what we'll be doing is we'll be publishing a GoFundMe for this debt of €2,500. And I think it'd be wonderful if all of us can contribute to that, so that Nitai Prabhu doesn't have this, the stress of this debt on him as he's taking on Guru Maharaj's instruction to travel and to do kirtan all over the world. So we will be publishing that. We'll be publishing that link to the GoFundMe on the disciples group, and all devotees who are able to, please do contribute to that, even if it's just according to your ability, according to your capacity. If we all get together, I'm sure we could knock that out of the park quite easily. So Nitai Prabhu, I hope you don't mind me sharing that, and our suggestion just to try to serve you in some small way in reciprocation for your tremendous service. I hope that's okay.
Thank you. I'm lost for words. I don't know what to say. Thank you very much.
So, dear devotees, we've come to the end of this program, but we have other senior devotees who will be sharing their tributes and their realizations. So please follow that on the disciple group. And apologies for the invite today containing some of the wrong timing information. I'm not sure myself. Maybe there's a switch due to daylight savings time or something like that. I'm not sure if that's happened. Maybe we missed that. But apologies for if we got the timing in the zones wrong. We'll get that right for the next session. So we have Jayal Veda Maharaj joining us for some upcoming sessions. Then we have the King's Day Vyasa Puja celebration at the end of April. So a number of opportunities for us to have each other's association and share memories and pastimes and realizations. So thank you again, Nitai Prabhu. Always wonderful to have your association with your beaming smile and your wonderful teeth. And, I think we're all looking forward to having you in our part of the world again as well.
Thank you.
Now let us offer our respectful obeisances unto all the Vaishnava devotees of the Lord. They are just like desire-trees who can fulfill the desires of everyone, and they're full of compassion for the fallen conditioned souls. Anantakoti Vaishnava Vrinda ki, Srila Gurudev ki,
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.